If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play, like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson for another episode of Second and Saints, Packers Saints preview. Ross, my man, it's a beautiful cold weather atmosphere out here in New Orleans, which you love.
I hate it.
Yeah, but it's going to warm up for Christmas, though. But, man, how you doing?
Oh, man, I'm good. I'm glad that we get a little bit of this cold weather so I can appreciate the warmth once it comes back. That's the way that I like to look at it. How you holding up, man?
I'm doing good, man. You know, the cold, it's like not even like super cold. It's the wind. The wind is
it's
brutal.
biting, man.
Yeah, it's got some bite to it. some rattlesnake-esque bite.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, no doubt. So
speaking of rattlesnakes,
yeah, glad you're doing well though, for sure. And yeah, before we do jump in that, I do want to tell people, so you know, it's no secret probably at this point, but both of us, we're not going to be in Green Bay. We've kind of hinted at this for this particular a couple episodes ago and stuff like that. But we will be doing a live stream discount Manning cast simulcast type thing where we're going to be kind of working, but we'll be on the live stream and we'll be around and all that good stuff. So be sure to check that out. We'll put some more details out there, but you probably expect, 20, 30 minutes before game time when we probably have some of that time, and we'll interact with some fans, have some fun, but it should be interesting. I'd say that, Ross.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? No, it'll be cool. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll give John and I a little bit of an opportunity to kind of not only react to what's happening in the game, but also give you hopefully a little bit of a peek behind the curtain in terms of what we're doing during games and, writing and tweeting and doing the whole thing and stuff like that. And so hopefully we can give you, because we've always made it a point on the show to talk about not only just the Saints, but also the process of covering an NFL team and being a beat writer and all these other things. And so it'll give us an opportunity to be there. And this is going to be a heck of a game to cover in front of you all, because there's some excitement around this one, John. I feel like there's a little bit of everything in this one, right? You got a rookie quarterback starting, you got injuries, you got, young players stepping up, you got a nationally televised head coach audition, you have a nationally televised audition by a team for a head coach. There's just a lot kind of wrapped up into this game for sure.
And you got a Packers team that is trying to make the playoffs, right?
Yeah,
right. Win this game, they're in the playoffs. And of course, there's some other scenarios that could happen. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, just so everybody knows, because there's this voodoo mathematical thing that exists that the Saints could win out and potentially get in, but they have to have Tampa lose out and Atlanta lose out. It's not happening. But
Atlanta got to lose two.
When they take the field on Monday, they can probably be eliminated from the playoffs. And so at that point, you're just playing for pride, draft picks, and it's a good chance to evaluate some of the things that you have in the future. You touched on the injuries. No Derek Carr, still not really on the field and all that stuff. Darren Rizzi saying that he kind of made some progress throughout the week and he's inching closer, quote unquote. But, it's kind of a refuting a earlier report saying that, we might not see him again for the rest of the year and such. And so it's caused this kind of rift, I guess, if you will, and not in the building, but just kind of where you hear one thing from the national media, then you hear another thing from what the team is. And so I guess we could start there because Spencer Rattler is going to start this game. Obviously, I think there's a lot of excitement for it, and he's going to get the chance to really do his thing, I guess, in a way. And we've kind of touched on the fact that how much he's grown over the past, several weeks since he started. And look, we're not talking he's going to go gangbusters or anything, but I would expect to see a more polished, more quote unquote mature Spencer Rattler. But why would they even look at bringing Derek Carr back is the first point or question I'd have. And then what are they going to get with Spencer Rattler?
Yeah, look, this is the analogy that I've been using for a little while, is that, okay, let's say I lost my voice, right? And I couldn't do my show for 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? And every fan or every listener, I shouldn't say fan, every audience member of Locked On Saints and Second and Saints said, you know what? We don't want Ross back. You better believe I'm showing back up. Like, you're not going to stop me. You can't keep me off the microphone. You technically could. You could tell me, Ross, you can't come on. You're not on the show anymore. You could technically do it. But I'm going to show up. I'm going to do my thing and everything like that. Like, this is what I've worked to do. Derek Carr is doing the same thing. And really, there's no reason for the New Orleans Saints to tell him otherwise. Like, it doesn't make them better to tell him you can't try to come back. It doesn't make them worse to tell him you can try to come back, because both things are true. Both things, as far as I can understand it, are true. Derek Carr wants to come back. He's working to come back. It's also highly unlikely we see him for the rest of the season. Like, both of those things can be true. Just because it's unlikely doesn't mean that he shouldn't be trying to get back out on the field. Look at Chris Olave. Unlikely that he's going to get back out on the field this season, but he's been at practice all week. He was doing tape. He was traveling with the team, all this other stuff. So I think that ends up making the big difference here. So you leave the door open for Derek Carr to return, because what does it hurt? What does it do? It doesn't hurt you. He's not taking practice reps. He's just going through rehab. So it's not making your young quarterbacks any worse. It's not like he's taking practice reps away from them and then they're taking the field after he got all the first team reps. Like, Spencer Rattler was with the first team all week this week. Everything's hurt. I think the thing that you're looking for when it comes to Spencer Rattler in this game is how comfortable he can be with the starting offensive line as opposed to backups of backups like his last 3 starts. And how comfortable he can be with a first-team offense that he's actually gotten reps with this week, because he didn't have reps with the first team last week when he went in and at halftime and then led 4 straight scoring drives up against Washington. Now, that was at home. That was up against a team that was still better than the New Orleans Saints on paper, but isn't as good as the Green Bay Packers, and not as good at defense as the Green Bay Packers. And, adverse weather conditions might play a little bit of a role in this one too. But I think you're looking for a guy to be a little bit more comfortable than the last 3 starts that he had. Maybe prepared a little bit differently under Darren Rizzi than under Dennis Allen, I think is probably fair to assume, based upon the preparation and changes of preparation we've seen across the entire team. And you're looking for him to just simply be more efficient, or not be more efficient, but be efficient as a quarterback, is what Darren Rizzi told me when I asked him that same question. What constitutes success for Spencer Rattler? He talked about efficiency, not turning the ball over, and then leading those drives. And that's what you're waiting to see from him. This isn't not a game to where the Saints have to win in the win column in order for Spencer Rattler to get a positive evaluation on the other side.
I totally agree. And look, I feel like if you couldn't do your show, you'd probably use like AI or cue cards or something like that.
I'd find a way.
You'd find a way. We still do it. And I kind of like, he's like Derek. He's going to find a way to get back on the field, just because.
If he can.
I mean, yeah. And I mean, that's just more says about who he is. I mean, he went through all the injuries last year. He's going to play hurt, like all players play hurt. Like, you guys know that, and he's no different. And so, I mean, there is definitely something to appreciate in that aspect. But, you're talking about Rattler and the prep work. I mean, it was interesting that he said during his presser today that, like, Andrew Janako, the quarterbacks coach, who we've talked a lot about on this show, literally brought the quarterbacks into a freezer that was 10 degrees to go over play calls. That's ridiculous. But
I love
thinking
it.
Outside the box. And that's why we went down that road of, like, staff that they should keep. And if they do keep the offensive staff together, like, I feel like it could be like, he's one of those easily, I'd say you got to keep him, like him, maybe a Clancy Barone. Not going to sit here and just go through every single name, but like, I could see it happening. But, for Rattler, it is a chance for him. It is a huge opportunity and huge, I don't want to say audition, but even when we talked about this before when the Hainer, the Rattler thing, like what happened against the Commanders, you're going to get a glimpse of, if anything, what the backup battle is going to be like next offseason or next year, assuming that Derek Carr's in the building, because of course, there's a lot of people that are saying, well, the $10 million roster bonus here on the third day of the league year, the the $40 million here and stuff. Again, it just depends on how it's going to play out. Like, you can't say that he definitely is going to be the quarterback. You can't definitely say he won't be the quarterback, but I think it is a discussion point, and it's going to depend on who they bring in as the new head coach. Everything I was told, one person told me that they'd be really shocked if he does get back on the field. But again, he's going to do everything he can to at least try. You know what I mean?
You're talking about this season, right?
This season, yeah. Shocked if he came back this season, right? Thank you for clarifying, for sure.
I just didn't want that. People
are going to run with it. They're going to run with it worse than those Facebook UK reports that come out all over the place, fake news. Anyways, but yeah, I just feel like, with Rattler, you're going to get to see a little bit of just kind of how he operates and what kind of growth he's done from those last 3 games that he had to now. And I think there's something exciting about that in that aspect. We got to see where Marquez Valdez-Scantling is at. He's got a back injury, but he's also got an illness. A bug has gone through the locker room, a flu bug, what Chase Young was dealing with, what Alvin had last week. And so that's never fun to deal with. But, for all intents and purposes, Rattler, at least this game, could be against the Raiders at home if, Derek doesn't make a miraculous turnaround and come back. And, he could do the finale against the Bucs, but it's just going to be one game at a time. But what an opportunity in the national spotlight to really make a name for yourself here.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, all 3 of those games present their own kind of dichotomy of challenge and opportunity, right? I mean, you have that up against Green Bay, you have the adverse weather conditions, you have a pretty good defense, but you also have a defense that's not super strong against the run and doesn't apply a lot of pressure. Or excuse me, that is super strong against the run, but doesn't apply a lot of pressure. My apologies. And so does he have more time to sit back and be able to dissect if they have to turn to the passing game and if the conditions aren't adverse enough to limit that passing game? Up against the Raiders, it's mostly a hapless team, but you're still going up against an NFL team there, and then it's a chance to go up against a team that your team should beat. So can you prove that you can lead your team to beating teams that you are better than? And then you would get a second crack at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if you're Spencer Rattler, who his first start came against. So it could all bookend to where his first start was against Tampa and his last start of the season was against Tampa. And so that could be really good for him, getting those 3 games in a row and an opportunity to be able to go out there. I have a feeling that the leash is not very tight on Spencer Rattler, certainly not as tight as it was on Jake Haener in his first start. And so even if there are struggles, I expect that the Saints will give him the opportunity to try to work through those.
Right. Yeah. I think the game plan is going to be important for him. And again, just like I talked about with Haener, the key is to get him comfortable early. You know what I mean? So whether those first 15 scripted plays, no Alvin Kamara in this one with that groin injury, they're going to use a committee approach. Rizzi specifically mentioned Kendre Miller, Jamal Williams, and Jordan Mims, which Jordan Mims is a nice change of pace back, but citing that, Jamal Williams and a lot of these guys have played in this type of element. Jamal played in Green Bay for sure. And look, a lot of these guys are going to have an opportunity to at least prove to the front office and prove to other people that, they do need to hang around here, or, some people or players are playing for their jobs next season. Or if it's not for here, it's for the next team. I mean, there's all sorts of meaningful things that are going on in this game. But I think the main thing is, how does Spencer Rattler do with his first team? Is it a kind of a peek behind the curtain? Maybe it's not next season, but maybe it's the following season, right? Like that's kind of been the plan, is that he sits on the bench for a couple of years. He's getting some experience now, and then maybe he is the starter in 2026. Maybe he's the starter next year. I don't know what's going to happen, but it just gives them a valuable piece of information going forward to figure out what they really have in Spencer Rattler, because I don't think that 3-game sample size is indicative of what his talent level is and what he can actually do. But I think this game against the Packers, I mean, look, they're very good again in the red zone. That was something Rizzi had called out, that, they were taking away stuff in the red zone last week. And look, they're definitely going to be a tough team to beat on the road. They're 14-point underdogs. So it's like the deck is stacked against them, but what an opportunity to play spoiler as the underdog this week, similar to what they could have done against the Commanders the week before.
Yeah, absolutely. 24-0 is the record for Matt LaFleur's Green Bay Packers when they win the turnover differential at home. So that's going to be a big number to watch in this one because the New Orleans Saints have generated 2 turnovers in the last 5 games after generating 14 turnovers in the first 9 games. And that is literally a break at where Dennis Allen was the head coach and wasn't the head coach. And so the Saints have got to figure that out a little bit more, figure out how to be able to generate turnovers, give their young quarterback, give that young offense, really, if you look at it between him and Kevin Austin and Kendre Miller and, the offensive line, like really your big veterans in this game are going to be at the tight end role. And then of course, Eric McCoy, who's, massive for you in terms of your ability to be able to do that, who, Spencer Rattler didn't have until he went into that second half up against the Washington Commanders. So it's this young offense that's going to be trying not to turn the ball over, going up against a young offense, or rather trying to counter what a Green Bay Packers young offense is looking to do that doesn't turn the ball over very much at all on the season. I think it's a +10 turnover differential so far this year. They've been outstanding there, but that's a difference, right? You have a young offense in the New Orleans Saints that don't have a lot of game experience together versus a young offense in Green Bay that has a ton of game experience together, about 2 seasons worth now. And so that's what you're going to see between these two offenses. And if the New Orleans offense can operate efficiently, I think that's huge news for that New Orleans Saints team as they look to try to identify who their building blocks are for their future.
Yeah. And look, when it's all said and done, they could be up in Green Bay again next year. Depends on how this schedule, but right now their Saints are third, Packers are third in their division, and that's one of the road games for next year, assuming the NFL doesn't change any formula. So it would most likely be Minnesota or Green Bay, but right now it's looking like Green Bay. So another year of going up to Green Bay. I just hope it's not in a cold weather atmosphere again, but
great.
Again, what an opportunity for Spencer Rattler. And look, we're going to break down way more on this one, but first, a word from Underdog, our sponsor. Hey, folks, John Hendricks here, Second and Saints. Wanted to talk to you quickly about Underdog because it is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players by just selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. This season, Underdog is going to be running a special promo or bonus almost every single day, like profit boosts, discounts, or free picks. Plus, all new users get a free pick. You could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Create entries with all football selections or mix and match across your favorite sports. Underdog puts the power to cash out in your hands. Now you can either keep riding with your entry or tap the Win Now button to cash out whenever you want. And with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. With Underdog's Double Flex option, you can even take 2 L's and still have your entry to be a win. So go download the app today and use code Second Saints to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's code Second Saints. Now here comes the legal jargon. Must be 18 or older, 19 and older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 and older in Colorado for some games, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. And now I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free and each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
Back here on Second and Saints, alongside Ross Jackson, John Hendricks, we're kind of breaking down, obviously, the Packers and Saints game. Ross, before we broke, we were obviously talking a lot about Spencer Rattler. With him, I think you talked about it earlier, when you asked Rizzi the question about what does a successful day look like for him. And being efficient, not turning the ball over. But, more importantly, or what does Spencer Rattler have to do to be able to upset the Packers defense, which is a really good one, like we talked about.
Yeah, got to start with the screw-on cleats, right? Got to stay upright. That's going to be big in this game, especially with the weather and everything like that. And so I think that's going to be, but I genuinely think that's going to be big, because I expect, when I spoke to Spencer a few weeks ago and kind of talked about, hey, once if you get that next starting opportunity, like, what is something that you learned? What is something you expect to do differently? And it's about using his legs more. And so I think that's going to be something he's going to have to do. Like I mentioned, the Green Bay Packers don't put on a ton of pressure when it comes to their defense. Their pressure generation for their defense right now is 28th in the NFL so far. And so I think that's going to be the big thing that you're going to be looking at, is him kind of extending those plays, getting outside the pocket, maybe playing a little bit of that playground type. We call it the sort of playground type football, to where he's creating plays, throwing off balance, doing all these things. Go for it. You know what I mean? Like I think Spencer Rattler should go into this game the same way that Jake Haener went into the last game, where he told me, we're 5-8. What do I have to lose? Well, now you're 5-9. What you got to lose? You know what I mean? Like, go out there and play. Like, go out there and show what you can do. And so I expect that's going to be a big thing. And he's going to have to do that, right? You're going to want to extend these plays, especially if Jair Alexander makes his return over the course of the 2 weeks before this. He was full for the first 2 practices of each week, but then was downgraded the final practice and was inactive in each of the last 2 games. This week, he's questionable, but he did practice all 3 days of the practice week. This week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So maybe he's back. So you're going to probably want some of those plays to extend a little bit longer, get a little bit of that kind of broken play feel, and then be able to try to take advantage of that for some big plays. I think the chunk plays, you got to find those. And that's where Marquez Valdes-Scantling could be big, a 30-plus yard reception between those two early on in the possession. Actually, that was the completion before Cedric Wilson threw a dime to Alvin Kamara for a touchdown last week. And then they connected for, I think it was another 25-yard catch, if I remember correctly. And so just, looking at opportunities to be able to continue that, find those chunk plays. And then I think fast start out the gate, fast start in the second half. They did a good job of that when they put him in last week. Touchdown, field goal, touchdown. That's what they were able to get in the 4 possessions in the second half. I don't think you necessarily have to replicate that in the first half, but if you can get kind of that fast start early, fast start again in the second half, I think those are going to be the things that you're looking for from them.
Yeah, and just playing 4 quarters of football. I mean, that's the main thing that you have really yet to see from this team ever since they started 2-0. And I think that's been a challenge, right? But, for Rattler, I think screen game can be his friend. I think getting Kendre Miller going, I mean, this is his first start since, the Atlanta game last year and the finale. And look, I'm excited to see Kendre Miller, because you look at that final drive against the Commanders, he was so valuable, and he just proves what he can do in this offense. And look, there's no Taysom, and now you're not going to have Alvin. So obviously he's going to be a focal point in this one. But, I think the way to get Rattler comfortable a little bit, get the ground game going a little bit, put him in some third and manageable situations. If you don't convert him, no big deal. Just put him into some best situations. And, obviously that clock in his head, that's one of the things I think him and Jacob really emphasized is, having that mental clock in your head, trying to figure out when you need to get the ball out, feeling the pressure. I mean, it's just going to be all those types of things for him. And again, I think he can play extremely well. I thought Jake could have played well last week. And of course, it's just because I think if they would have done some things better, it might be a different conversation. But I think the same thing is true of Spencer Rattler. And so we're going to see. I mean, the Saints offense, it's really going to be a thing. Can they put up some points, lean on Juwan Johnson a little bit, maybe a little bit of Foster Moreau in there if you can. And then defensively, as we kind of shift and transition, Josh Jacobs, I mean, he's been fantastic for their ground game, right? And Jordan Love's playing pretty well out there, and definitely a different Jordan Love than they saw last year, which obviously they came back from, that big old deficit. But, Josh Jacobs is going to test the Saints defense, a defense that had 8 sacks last week. Even if you take away the 2 coverage sacks or the 0-yard sacks, they still had 6. So they were hitting a lot of their level, if you will. But, what does the Saints defense have to do to really try to keep their offense in this?
Well, keep that pressure going for sure, and generate turnovers. I think it's got to be the other thing, and that's going to be a bit of a change of direction for this team. That's a big situation for them. Is are they going to be able to do that? Because we haven't seen that from them over the course of these 5 games. And I mentioned that the Saints turnover numbers dropped off since they fired Dennis Allen, but they also dropped off once they traded away Marshawn Lattimore too, right? And so, when you can take away one half of the field, then things change. But even when Marshawn Lattimore was out with injury, they were still forcing turnovers. And so I think that's got to be a big thing that they look at over there. And so for me, those are the two big ingredients, right? It's the relationship between rush and coverage. Get pressure on the quarterback, generate turnovers, be opportunistic. I think those are the big things they've got to be able to do. Obviously, defend the run, but you're looking for a team to kind of change direction a bit if that's the case, like really change who they are, because they've struggled against the run all season when the opposing team has actually been able to run. So maybe the best way for them to ward the run off is to succeed on offense, right? Be efficient, extend plays, put points on the board. That might be their best run defense, but they did manage well against the run in each of the last 2 weeks. Even if you take the quarterback numbers, especially if you take the quarterback rushing numbers out of it, and you consider Jaden Daniels rushed 11 times last week, but just over 60 yards, even though he was the leading rusher, like that's not bad in terms of what we thought the type of damage that Jaden Daniels was going to be able to do. So whatever Brian Young is doing with this defensive line right now, and then, Michael Hodges with the linebackers and kind of that defensive front, it's working so far. And so just remain consistent there.
Yeah, totally resurgent Cam Jordan. Damari Davis is coming off of one of his best games of his career. He only had one game higher where he had 15 tackles. That's his career high. That was with the Saints. And he had, another 14 tackle effort. So it's just like he was playing exceptional. And of course, I think that's big. Obviously, when you're facing a Josh Jacobs, you find your footing on a game like this. There are traveling a little bit earlier on Sunday to be able to go and have a walkthrough at the field and just kind of get a little bit used to it. Some inches of snow that's supposed to be projected on Sunday, a couple of inches on Monday, obviously no big deal, but like you mentioned earlier, the cleats and the footing is going to be big. And it's funny because Rizzi was talking about like the cold's not really that big of a deal because on the sideline they stay warm, but more when you're on the field, that's when it gets cold. And then what really would affect things is if it's wet, right?
That's the big one.
I don't know, but they played in a cold weather. Like you remember the Cleveland game? That was like sub-zero type stuff. That was like frigid. This is not what that is. So it's like, there's that narrative that followed the Saints. Oh, they're a dome team. They can't win outside in a cold game. Just shut up. That's not how it goes. This is a football team and all this other stuff. But, I'm with you. Defensively, it's I think how you got to hone in on Josh Jacobs a little bit. When you got a chance to make a play on Jordan Love, you gotta do it, right?
Got to take it. Yep.
That's the biggest thing. And I liked some of the pressure that they were able to generate against Washington. Now, maybe some of it was because they didn't have their center. Maybe a lot of it was because of their talent level and what they are doing with Brian Young, which I'm very encouraged that the defensive line has gotten a lot better under Brian Young, and he's a former player. So it's just one of those like 2 and 2 together. Maybe there's something there. And, you just hate to say now that, when the 3 games to go and when the offseason gets here, do they start seeing coaches go now or do they wait until a new coach comes or do those coaches take other opportunities elsewhere? I mean, there's all sorts of things that will be on the table for the Saints and for other players and coaches, especially.
Yeah, this is a big game. I mean, like to have a nationally televised game here in week 16 and then just 2 games to follow before you enter a head coaching search. Like there's a lot that goes into this. There's these young players trying to prove that they can be cornerstone members of the foundation moving forward. Darren Rizzi gets his national television, opportunity to interview or check off his best possible resume line in front of everybody in the NFL world, probably go viral at some point with some reaction or something like that. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of that goes into it. And then raise his profile a little bit so that, because we got to remember, either Darren Rizzi is going to become the full-time head coach and have that interim tag removed, or he's going to be looking for a job somewhere, right? Because interim head coaches don't stick around after they don't get the full-time job. And some of that is because the team decides that, some of that is the player or the coach deciding like, well, y'all didn't believe in me that way, so I'm gonna go somewhere that might. Mm-hmm. Other times it's, that's awkward for the new head coach to come in to have the guy that was just calling the shots still in the building. Like you can't do that. and everything. That's like trying to convince your ex to stick around with your new partner to be your live-in housekeeper. Like, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, it ain't gonna work for nobody. And so, nah. And so you can't do that. So it gives him an opportunity to kind of raise his profile a bit. And then it also gives the New Orleans Saints an opportunity to raise their profile as a potential destination for other head coaching candidates outside of the organization as well. So it's a really important game, one way or another, no matter how you cut it.
Right. And of course, if I'm Ben Johnson, I'm watching this game. If I'm Aaron Glenn, I'm watching this game.
100%.
If I'm Mike Vrabel, it was interesting because they had just released some of the latest odds. Joe Brady is the leading guy, and that seemed to get a lot of fans excited. I mean, what he's doing with Josh Allen is great, but Josh Allen is also insane, right? You know what I mean? Not to take away from Joe Brady, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's fascinating because I think when it's all said and done, those candidates I just talked about with Rizzi and obviously Glenn and, you know, some of those, I think those got to be the leaders at this point on who would nail the job here. And look, I know of the coaching spots that are going to be available. I mean, it could be as many as 10, but you got to look at what's on this roster, what it offers opposed to somewhere else. And look, it's going to depend on who leads the charge. Is it Mickey? Is it Gail going to put somebody else in charge of it? You know what I mean? Like, do you stick with what's familiar? Do you go outside of the realm of what it is, like you did with the Sean Payton? I mean, it's just fascinating, but I think they're at a crossroads here when they do get there, is saying, okay, what we've been doing for the past 4 years, it doesn't matter whether it's injury related, talent related, it doesn't matter if it's coaching related, just whatever the case may be. They haven't won in one-score games. Nothing has changed in that aspect. Something has to change in the building, and something has to change with the leader that you bring in to be able to inspire this group, to be able to put forth a winner. Because if they win these one-score games, Dennis Allen still has a job, right? Like, I mean, let's just face it like that. And then some of them are fool's gold because they've come back at the end and all this other stuff. But, you know, fascinating that this team is probably going to have a lot of eyes on it. It's not just fans. It's not just going to be, you know, Vikings fans and Lions fans rooting for the Saints. It's going to be some of them coaches too. I guarantee you.
Yep, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. The Saints right now on this season 2-5 when it comes to their record in close games. Green Bay Packers 5-3. So if you want to win this one, you got to win by, you know, you probably want to have a little bit of a deficit in this one. The New Orleans Saints are so interesting too, because they're in terms of point differential, they're 16th in the NFL, just +1. But their average margin of victory is over 17.5 points. It's 17.8 points, which is number 1 in the NFL. And so, like, when they've won, they've had these massive wins, right? Starting off with the first 2 games, and then you look at the Cleveland win was a sizable win and all that. And so it's just like the narrative of this season is just so hard to track. Like, I can't imagine if somebody was, you know, covering the NFL for the first time 10 years from now, and they were like, tell me about the 2024 2024 New Orleans Saints season. And you just handed them the numbers. Like, what do you say about the season? You know what I mean? Like, not what do we as people who have experienced say, but like, if I just handed somebody the numbers, what do they think of the season? Like, it's such a wild, it's been such a wild year. And then that's before you even tell them, like, well, yeah, they also had, you know, a bunch of different injuries. Both their top 2 wide receivers are out. Both their corners are out. They lost their multi-faceted weapon. They started 3 different quarterbacks, and they had 2 different head coaches. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, right. It's such a weird, hard narrative to track for this season. But, you know, it's what's going to be what's most important right now is how these next 3 games end up wrapping up. And again, they don't all have to be wins in order for the New Orleans Saints to find success. That's going to be really hard for people to accept, but that is the truth from the NFL landscape of, yes, that's a destination that I would want to be employed by as a head coach. And that's where the New Orleans Saints kind of have to be focused over these next 3 games.
And the leader does matter, because look at what the Rams did. Everybody counted them out. They had the injury bug, all this other stuff. Then they just hung in there, kept doing it. And what do you know? They're in the wild card picture very much, and, you know, and all this other stuff. And so it's just, again, the right leader is what I'm looking for out of this team. And I just don't know offhand, you know, if the fans can say definitively who is that guy. Yeah. Without question. And again, some people said, well, I'm kind of over the Rizzi thing and stuff. I mean, just see how it shakes out, because if he wins the last 3, I think if he wins this game, I think it jumps him back in that conversation. Okay, maybe he's in the driver's seat. Then it might be his job to lose. But, you got to do the impossible, and with the impossible, right? Like your deck is stacked against you and such. And look, could they do it? Sure. They almost upset the Commanders last week. They were one play away from doing that, and then we'd be having different conversations. But the sad fact is they didn't win. It's almost. You don't get almost anything in the NFL.
Right.
And, I'd say, of course, I probably don't have to ask you, but, Green Bay is probably going to win this game, like 99.5% is what I'd say. I don't know that I'd pick the Saints. Maybe they'd cover the spread, or you know what I'm saying? But
yeah.
But
I'm
I just don't know that I would pick New Orleans in this game at all.
No. That wouldn't be logical, right? Like the Green Bay Packers are the superior team on paper on almost every metric. Everything. The thing to watch is going to be what the scoring is. The Saints over the last 3 games have allowed just over 17 points per game, so they've done pretty well there. That includes a game against the Los Angeles Rams, who are the 6th highest scoring team in the NFL, and against the Washington Commanders, who were a middle of the road scoring team in the NFL, and then there were the Giants in there, of course, too. But the Green Bay Packers have scored, I think it's 30.3 points per game over the last 3 games, and so one of those is going to give, right, at some point. And so we'll see exactly which way that all goes, but I think that's probably the closest place where the Saints are evenly matched, let alone, have an actual advantage. And so I think it would be foolhardy to say, yeah, the Saints are going to, are going to upset the Green Bay Packers and all this other stuff. But I'll tell you what, if they do that, it comes down to special teams. I truly believe that. I think it's a blocked punt, blocked field goal. I mean, both of the 2 of the 3 victories that the Saints have had over the course of the Darren Rizzi era so far have been on blocked field goals at the end of regulation, everything, or at least close to the end of a game, end of the game. And so I think it comes down to special teams if they do get a win. But I'm with you. I think the Packers win this game, but the Saints still have an opportunity to be able to show some positives despite the loss. And I would take the Saints probably to cover in this one.
Yeah, I for real, I understand that, if you're saying that they have a chance, of course they have a chance, but it's just maybe Spencer can come and play gangbusters. But like you just said, special teams matters. And how does Matt Hayball punt in this one? How does Groupie do in the snow? What does that look like? Obviously, you can't just leave points on the board in a game like this, but we're going to find out pretty quickly. And look, it's, again, another exciting one. One thing we didn't really talk about, just to bring up, you kind of touched a little bit on it, but it'll start with Bub Means. He had a setback in his ankle injury. He's not going to come back. It looks like he's going to revert to IR because his window is closing, and just doesn't sound that good for him. You kind of touched on Chris Olave, but look, just kind of talk about the vibe for him this week, obviously being out there again and smiling. I thought that was funny for Rizzi to make it a point of how much he has been smiling and just being Chris himself and stuff, and no rush to put him back on the football field. And it still sounds like it might be a couple weeks and the ball's in his court too.
Yeah. They made a big point about how like Chris is a big part of that decision, and that it's not just that they're going to throw him out there. It's how does Chris Olave feel? How's his safety? All those other things. So the thing that I loved about it is that they're really looking at this from the human perspective, and they're just happy to see Chris Olave happy. And Chris Olave has been very excited to be back out there on the football field and with the team. It doesn't mean that he'll be back on the playing field, but it's been really cool to see him out there. And obviously the team is really excited to have him back around as well.
Yeah, positive presence all around. It's just infectious, one of those guys too. You don't think too much of it in the locker room and stuff, but you're kind of soft spoken, but he's solid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is what I would say. All right. Well, Ross, as we wind down this thing, anything else about this game didn't cover that I might have missed? I don't know. I think we caught it most of it.
No, I think we pretty much hit everything. Just gonna be really interesting to see how the season wraps up, man. Like I said, still a lot to learn about this team. It's still a lot for these people to individually play for, and therefore still a lot to watch. So excited to cover the rest of the season.
Right. And a lot of free agents too. So, I mean, this is big decisions to make on a lot of these guys. And, we'll see how they kind of play out. How does Chase Young boost his stock at the end of it all? There's just a lot of them that you just look at and say, okay, this could be really, really good for a lot of things. But, we'll see how that salary cap situation works itself out and all that other stuff too. Ross, what's coming up on Locked On and what you got in LouisianaSports.net?
Yeah, so over at Locked On, kind of highlighted all the reasons why there are to still to still watch this team, because there's still a lot that they're playing for and everything. I'll do another episode before I hit the road on Sunday to just kind of highlight, like, hey, here's a couple of elements of the game to watch. Very curious to see if we're going to see design runs for Spencer Rattler. Haven't seen a lot of that for him so far this year, so really, really interested to see that. And then over at LouisianaSports.net, I'm going to have a story out tonight or Saturday evening going into Sunday morning on Chris Olave and kind of his return, update on Bub Means, things like that. And then I have a piece that I do every week called Statistically Speaking, to just kind of look at like the comparison between the two teams around their major statistics: scoring offense, passing offense, rushing offense, turnover differential, stuff like that. So just give you a little bit of a glimpse behind that, in addition to 5 things to watch for the team. Keep in mind, John and I won't have stuff on elevations and everything like that. John, it's Sunday. It'll be Monday during the day that they report those, usually for a Monday night game, right? So
typically.
So that's where we'll learn a little bit about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, former LSU Tiger. See if he ends up hitting the field. I'm not expecting it. Although, like, they have the 3 weeks worth of elevation, so they could just do it so that he's active. But it's going to depend on other positions and where they need help and things like that. I think Marquez Valdez-Scantling would be a big factor in that conversation too, because if you have to elevate an Equanimeous St. Brown or something like that, then obviously you're probably going to lose that spot. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how they handle that. But we'll have all that covered over at both spots. What you got coming up, buddy, over at Saints on SI?
Well, look, it's college football playoffs, so some of the things I've been highlighting is looking at a lot of these prospects to keep an eye out on. So obviously kind of seeing how some of that's win, and Lane Kiffin's response was pretty interesting about what happened in that first game. So, poor Indiana, they didn't ask for that, I guess. But again, a lot of it just because fans are going to obviously want to know about the draft, who's to look for. So kind of digging in. Ohio State's playing on Saturday night. Everybody knows the Ohio State history. They got some gamers that are coming to the draft. So, and put in there too about who's going to the Senior Bowl, because that's going to be a big focal point too, since the Saints obviously are going to be, repped out in that too. We'll have more on this game, if you will, and get our stuff, our 2 pennies for whatever that matters and such. And then everything leading up to our fun little simulcast live stream. And so come hang out with us, and I'll try not to spoil too much for the game, because I might be ahead of you, Ross. It's possible. Everybody tells me I'm from the future, but
hey, you're from the future, man.
We'll see, man. Yeah, I don't know how to read on this game yet, so I have a guess, and which y'all know. So all right, well, we will holler at you on Monday. Stay tuned for all the information. We'll schedule it out and all that fun stuff, and we'll probably pop in and out, because we got to eat and all that other stuff, and live. We can't just not do that, right? But we'll be around and all that good stuff. So looking forward to seeing you guys there. And if you're not following Locked On or LouisianaSports.net or Saints News Network, make sure you go do all that. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. A lot of cool things developing in the off season. We've got a lot to talk about, and these are the 2 guys, me and Ross, that you probably want to hear some of it from. So that'll do it for us today. And on behalf of Mr. Ross Jackson, John Hendricks signing out for another episode of Second and Saints. Y'all have a good one. Stay good, people.
Love you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas if you don't hear from us again.
If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.